So Casey, thanks for being on the show today.
No problem. I listened to the interview you did that you sent me. I thought it was great.
Oh, with Damien Eccles from the West Memphis Three.
Yes, yeah.
Oh
What
yeah,
an interesting character. I don't know. Actually didn't know who he was. That
Oh.
case was not a thing here. I don't remember ever hearing about that in the media over here. So that was a whole thing.
Yeah,
To learn about, so.
the West Memphis Three was quite a major case in the '90s, and like Peter Jackson did a documentary and several others. So yeah, they talk about being railroaded by the system. It's
Yeah.
terrible, terrible.
Yep.
Anyway, I recently came across your blog, and I was reading a post you did on Medium called "Leaving Neverland Isn't a Documentary," and that it's a work of fiction, and I found it fascinating.
Thank you.
So talk about the documentary right now, Leaving Neverland. I watched part one, haven't seen part two yet, but it's an explosive documentary. Once again, there's a similar to what happened in 2003 with Michael Jackson. There's a major public outcry right now. People are shocked. Do you think Michael Jackson is having a posthumous Me Too moment right now?
Well, what I said to to the New York Times, because they interviewed me about a week ago and published it, is I said I think this is a hijacking of the Me Too movement. It's a sick hijacking of it, and I think it's not a coincidence that we see this come up in this climate. I think it's very deliberate, the timing. I think it's very deliberate that we're seeing it in the midst of the Me Too climate. We're seeing it on the 10th anniversary of Michael's passing, a year where they know there is public attention on him. And to corroborate this feeling that I have, this is very deliberate, they invited Tarana Burke to the premiere of this film at Sundance.
And who is that?
So Tarana Burke is the woman that started the Me Too movement.
Oh, okay.
So they very deliberately invited her to the premiere. Why would you do that? So you tell me. Like that's very, very suspect. So
yeah, that is interesting. So have you seen part one and part two of the documentary?
I haven't sat down and watched the entire thing. I've seen quite a few clips of it. I've myself and a number of people. I mean, we've had very detailed notes about everything that's in it, so it's not as if we don't know what's being said in it. But actually, it's all based on what's this court case they've been trying to do since 2013. They've had this court case going on, for over 5 years. All the documents are public record. They're all easily viewable. And, their court cases have been thrown out twice. So 4 times if you're talking about the two guys. And the judge threw out the entire witness statement and stated that no rational juror can believe a word that they were saying. So they're in appeal at the moment. So this is a big sticking point as well, because they're in appeal. They're trying to get hundreds of millions of dollars in damages. Their court documents have some absolutely outrageous claims, aside from what they're alleging. But their court documents, they're trying to paint a picture of Wade Robson was a guy who was on track to be one of the most successful entertainers of all time. This is literally what they say in their document, which is just it's complete nonsense. I mean, the guy had an MTV show for like a year, 20 years ago.
Well, hold
he
on.
did a Britney tour.
I thought he was like a head choreographer. At least this is the way they portray him in the film. He was like a head choreographer for Britney Spears and NSYNC, and he had like a kind of a major career in the mid-aughts, but then it seemed to have waned in recent years.
This is 20 years ago that the guy had any semblance of a career, long before Michael died, right?
Yeah.
So then what happens is he's basically broke. His wife is threatening to leave him. He blows an opportunity to direct a gig for whatever reason. He's just not up to it, and then he petitions the Michael Jackson estate to do the Cirque du Soleil show that's running in Vegas, MJ1.
He wanted to direct that show, right?
Yes. He's petitioning hard. He's petitioning hard to the estate. And at one point, he's even on TMZ, and the footage is still out there, saying that he's doing the show, right? He was never offered the gig. And so, yeah, he's on camera on TMZ saying he's doing it.
And he was never actually officially
He was
offered.
never offered it. He
or
was never offered.
associated in any way.
Yeah, not at all. He was never offered any work on it. John Branca, who's the co-executive of the MJ estate, said, "Oh, there was a possibility that Jamie King, who we did hire, might hire him in some low role as a dancer, but certainly not in any kind of creative decision-making role, and certainly not to choreograph the whole thing." But he was never offered any work at all, and he claims that he was. So that's just an outright lie, and all the documents from that are out there.
And this is recent. This is like what, around 2010?
This is 2010, 2011 ish.
Okay.
And then it's right after that he gets turned down for doing this show that he supposedly has this breakdown and remembers in one version of his story. This is when he, quote unquote, remembers this abuse. In another version of the story, he says he's always remembered, but he didn't know that it was wrong. So that's another just absolutely outrageous statement. He was the lead defense witness at the 2005 trial. So to say that he didn't know it was wrong, when you're the lead witness in one of the biggest criminal trials of all time, that's just nonsense. I mean, that's clearly nonsense.
Well, I think in the documentary, he claims that he and his parents were coached by Michael, and that he also felt that he was helping out his friend who had helped him in so many ways.
Sure, and he's also lied about the specifics of that as well. So he says that he went to Neverland, saw that Michael was just a broken man by the trial and that he was ignoring his children, and that's when he has this moment where he decides to help him. This is what he says in the documentary. Yeah. This has already been debunked by other people who were at that exact meeting, that dinner at Neverland. That dinner happened after he'd already testified, right? So for him to come out and say, "Oh yeah, I saw this," and that's what. No. You already testified.
I read that he had actually failed to pitch a book that he had written about the molestations, and this was on or around the same time of the lawsuit, I think.
It's before the lawsuit.
Before the lawsuit, okay.
So before the lawsuit, he has two different versions of this book that he's shopping around. Both contain contradicting statements, and he doesn't get picked. No publisher is interested. Like, there's none. So he hired a big Hollywood agent, and he shopped it around to all the big book publishers. They're all named in the documents. It's all there. No bites, right? Then he decides to file this lawsuit. So first of all, anybody that had gone through something like this, I don't believe that your first reaction is to write a book. And then, so once he's got no bites of this book and he decides to file his lawsuit, this is where, if we look at this original filing of the lawsuit and then we look at stuff he's saying now, this is where yet another lie gets exposed. So there's some stuff that's being said, why? And then when people ask him, why are you doing this? And he says, I need to speak up for victims and blah, 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 blah. So, this is just nonsense from this guy. So when he files his lawsuit under private seal to pressure the estate to settle privately so that nobody knows about it, right? Does that sound like what you do if you were trying to help victims? No.
Well, no, definitely not. I mean, it sounds like he was trying to get just an easy settlement, cash payout, and move on.
Exactly.
Which has happened before, though. I mean, there's a precedent for that.
Well, the estate called his bluff. They were like, no. We know that you have no claim here, and this is nonsense. So if you want to take this to a public court trial, bring it. And he did, and it was thrown out. As I said, the judge found that no rational juror could believe a word of what he was saying.
I thought there was also a statute of limitations on that as well.
And this is also that also coincides with his differing stories, right? So for him to try and work around this statute of limitations, he has to claim, which he did claim, that he did not know about the estate until he filed the lawsuit, right? So. But there's public record documents from years before that where not only is his name from his own lawyer, there's a statement of, I represent Wade Robson and he works with the Michael Jackson estate, right? Years before this. And emails are out there between him and the estate of him trying to get the gig. So yet another lie.
what about Safechuck? Like, when did his lawsuit come to play?
So Safechuck sees Wade talking in an interview about his lawsuit after it's gone public and he's being interviewed about it.
Did they know each other at all or have any kind of connection other than the lawsuit?
I don't believe that they ever knew each other. No, I don't think so before that. But Safechuck sees Wade talking about it and then hires the same law firm, suddenly also, quote unquote, remembers that he was abused, despite the fact that he also gave testimony in the 2005 trial. He was not a witness on it, but he gave testimony to the lawyers. So he suddenly, quote unquote, remembers that he was abused, files a lawsuit with the same lawyers. And this is where, if we look at then compared to now, we see another lie coming out, because the makers of this film try and claim that they did not speak with each other, and that's what makes it so compelling, because their stories match up and all this stuff. And that is not true. In the court documents, we see that they were in communication in 2013, 2014, 5 years ago, right? So at least 4 full years before this movie was
documentary,
made, right? Same law firm since that time, plenty of time to align what they're saying.
So
right?
do you feel that they're both opportunists corroborating with each other to extort the estate just for an easy payout?
Yeah, absolutely. There are numerous examples in the last 30 years of people filing lawsuits against Michael Jackson and his company's estate for the attempts of trying to get money. And this is not unique to Michael Jackson.
It's celebrities in general.
Celebrities, exactly. And even since Prince passed away in 2016, we saw endless lawsuits being filed of people claiming that they were his children, even though he had no children because he left no will. So people trying to get the money from his estate. Yeah, and this is.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there a woman named Billie Jean who tried to sue him for X amount of millions of dollars for proceeds from that song? Exactly.
Yeah. And all of these cases, have been thrown out of court eventually. But the point is that they were heard, right?
Well, except for Jordan Chandler. I mean, there is a multi-million-dollar settlement there.
Yeah, and this settlement with Jordan Chandler, this is another myth from the media, right? So they say that Michael Jackson paid off Jordan Chandler, and therefore that means he was guilty. That's completely reductive and lacks the context of what actually happened. So what actually happened was that Michael was on the Dangerous tour, and his lawyers, his accountants, his insurance company did all the math, and they figured that canceling the Dangerous tour to do a criminal trial, which Michael is on record as saying he was happy to do, right, would cost them hundreds of millions. And if you look at the amount of money that the Dangerous tour made, that's true.
Yeah.
So they figured, let's settle 20 million, continue with the tour. And the interesting thing here is that civil settlement actually did not preclude the jury from deciding if there was a criminal trial could happen, right? So the grand jury failed or declined to indict Michael for a criminal trial because they had no evidence.
Well, I think they decided the investigation was inconclusive at the time. However, exactly. I recall Jordan was able to accurately describe Jackson's genitals, including identifiable markings.
A complete myth. His drawing.
How so?
His drawing, which is public record, is it's like something a 5-year-old would draw. It's completely ridiculous. He claims that Michael was circumcised. The autopsy proves that is a lie, and the markings don't match up. The autopsy again is public record. So again, that's another myth that has been ran with by the media, but it did not match up. But the most shocking thing that I fail to see people mention, we have Jordan Chandler's dad on record saying it was an extortion attempt. Right?
When did he say he was Evan Chandler, right? The dentist.
Evan Chandler. That's right.
Yeah.
While it was happening, he was wiretapped. There was an investigation going on, and he said, and he admitted that it was an extortion attempt. He said, if I go through with this, his career will be over, and I will get everything I want.
But I think he
right?
was also in a bitter divorce with his ex-wife at the time, who
Yeah,
was raising
exactly.
Jordan. So I think he
Yeah,
was trying to discredit her.
exactly. And he was trying to he was trying to discredit her, but he was again just trying to get a lot of money. After all of this fell apart, Jordan emancipated himself from his father, and shortly after Michael died, Evan killed himself.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't know that.
so yeah, a
So
few months after Michael died, he kills himself, shoots himself in the head.
what about the Neverland maid son? I heard there was a settlement there for $2 million.
Is this Blanca
Yeah.
Francia? Yeah, she has been caught selling things that she illegally took from Neverland. Michael's clothes, his underwear. She sold stories to the tabloids. Every possible disgusting thing that you could think of with people's private belongings. Again, absolutely no evidence. Made up stories. In fact, I think I'm not sure if it was her, but yeah, I think it was her. She was asked point blank in an interview that she still owed money to the estate for the lies that she had said, and she admitted it. She's like, yeah, I still owe the money, but I don't want to talk about that. But that was what was happening, and so when you get to the Arvizo trial, that's when Michael's like, no, this is not happening anymore. We're gonna fix this once and for all. And he goes on trial, and as everybody knows, he was completely exonerated on every
He was
single count.
acquitted of all charges. But I mean,
Exactly.
people can also say that, he had the best defense attorneys that money could buy at the time. And now you have Robson and Safechuck claiming that they were coached with their testimony.
Well, Safechuck was not part of the 2005 trial actually at all.
Oh, he wasn't. Oh, okay. I thought he
No.
wasn't a witness.
No, he
Oh,
wasn't.
so he was part of the 1993 trial or case.
I don't believe so. I think he declined to be a part of that.
I thought he was deposed. But maybe I'm wrong. But the thing is, with 2003, that became a pretty major spectacle because you also had the Martin Bashir documentary that came out called "Living with Michael Jackson."
Well, this is what leads to the case. They see the public sort of interest because that was one of the highest viewed documentaries of all time. And then you see the Arvizos come out and try and get money out like right after this. But one of the stupidest things that they tried to claim in their trial, which was, I think, definitely played a part in the jurors saying these people are just complete extortionists. Arvizo tries to claim that the abuse happened after the filming of this. Not only after the filming, after the airing of this show, right?
Of the documentary? I thought it.
Yeah. No, this is what he claims.
I thought it was a precursor to the documentary. Yeah.
How stupid would Michael Jackson have to be, right, for this thing to be all over the world? Everybody's seen it, and then he starts doing that, right, when he's in the public eye, like more than ever.
Yeah, that doesn't seem very well thought out there.
It's complete nonsense.
But what about all the stories of like the Jesus juice and like the pornography and all that at Neverland?
Sure. Well, the pornography, I actually think also completely exonerates Michael. It's all legal heterosexual pornography, right? Including the stuff that was right by his bed. And
so they never found child porn at all?
No, they did not.
What about
like
lifelike child-sized dolls? I read that was something that they come across.
I don't recall that. I think when you're doing wiretaps of people, when you're doing surprise raids on Neverland, as the FBI did for a long period of time, and you pick up straight heterosexual pornography by a man's bed, I think that pretty much tells you where his interests lie. And to disbelieve that, you're also, which I believe that they infer or imply in this film as well. I'm loath to call it a documentary because I believe it lacks integrity at all. You also would then have to believe that Michael's marriage to Lisa Marie Presley was fake, right? Which is outrageous. What does she have to gain from doing that? she's just as rich as he is.
Yeah, at the time, I think now she has some financial hardship. At the time, she was probably as wealthy as he was. But I
Yeah.
thought they were saying that it was like after 1993, he was in a position where he needed a public relationship with a woman to regain his credibility. And
That's
she
what
had,
what they'll say. But what does she have to gain from doing that? Is what I see.
oh,
And she's
back
on
in the
record
start,
saying that
back in the
normal
spotlight.
marriage, a normal marriage, a normal sex life. Well, does she need? She could be back in the spotlight anytime she wants. She's Elvis's kid. She doesn't do literally anything on her own and be in the spotlight. And regardless of Lisa, I personally know, and anybody who knows about Michael Jackson also knows other women that he dated in the 80s,
Debbie Rowe,
in the 90s. Right? Well, Debbie's an interesting one because she was his plastic surgeon's assistant, and he felt like she would be a good mother of his children. But there are plenty of women that he dated. Stephanie Mills, the legendary R&B singer, he dated her. Several women who are not famous. Paris Jackson has said he was dating a Middle Eastern woman not long after the trial, and actually, if you go back to that time, you will see several media articles that sort of report things like, oh, Michael Jackson's converting to Islam and he went to Bahrain and blah, 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 blah. And yeah, that's a lot of that is not necessarily factually true, but based on the fact that he was dating a Muslim Middle Eastern woman. And Paris is on record as saying that as well.
It's interesting that these women, though, never went on record in any of these documentaries. That's one thing about like Finding Neverland when they say it's a documentary. Why? Like, what's the motivation of Martin Bashir, who's a respected journalist, and HBO to air a documentary that you claim is mostly fictional or something that people could dispute like that? Because wouldn't that just automatically question their journalistic integrity?
Well, HBO is desperate for ratings, so that's their bottom line. Their head guy, Richard Plepler, has actually just resigned.
Yeah, but they have Game of Thrones. I think they have plenty of ratings for that.
What else do they have? I mean, one show does not really. If you look at their documents to their, I think it was in their report to shareholders or something like that. Or it may even have been leaked communication, but there's something out there that basically says like they're getting killed by Netflix, they're getting killed by Fortnite, they're getting killed. Like that's what they've said. That this is our competition. Like it's not even just other networks. It's like Fortnite and video games and stuff, and they're desperate for it. They need the ratings.
They've had some major shows, in the past, and Game of Thrones is definitely a ratings giant for them. But yeah, I mean, I think it's also, this is something they know is going to be sensational. They know people are going to freak out about. It's going to be controversial. However, it makes me wonder why they would present something like this and air something like this when they could be possibly liable for punitive damages. So the Jackson's family, Jackson estate, is suing HBO now for $100 million. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you think they're going to win, or do you think there'll be a settlement?
I think there will almost certainly be some kind of settlement. Yeah, I think one of. Yeah, I mean, I think what's really damning, and see, we're still in very early days of this, right? So there was a gap of a few days between the US airing and the UK airing, and just in that gap of a few days, some of what happened in the film was debunked so thoroughly that they took it out of the UK airing. The UK airing is half an hour shorter than the US one.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Do you know which parts they omitted?
So I haven't sat and watched both of them to compare, but it's half an hour is the running time. But I know that one of the parts that's been so debunked so thoroughly that they took it out is in the US airing. There's this scene where Wade is burning everything that MJ supposedly gave him. Right.
I guess I didn't see that.
Happens right at the end. Happens right at the end of the second part, from what I understand.
Why wouldn't he sell that? I mean, don't you think you could sell it on eBay for instead of burning it?
Sure. This is the thing. So he's showing all the stuff. Like, I need to get over this, and I'm burning all this stuff that Michael gave me, and blah 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 blah. And it's like, I believe it's some very like recognizable stuff, like a Thriller jacket and stuff like that. Since the US airing, Julian's Auctions came out and said what he is burning has to be fake because he consigned everything that he had to us in 2011 for us to sell. He wanted to do it anonymously. We said no. We consigned it all. We sold it all at auction, and he did it because he needed the money. Now, Julian's Auctions, a very respected auction house, on record saying this.
What about, there's a scene in the movie where I think it was Safechuck who had all this jewelry from Michael Jackson. It was like an emotional scene for him. Do you think that's fake? Do you think the jewelry's fake?
Why would you keep it if that was true?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering why he wouldn't sell that.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That's just, it's clear, willful emotional manipulation, which is what this entire film is. And he, his lies are, just as some of them, and his family as well, are just as ridiculous as Wade. So there's this scene in the film where Safechuck's mom says that she danced when she heard that Michael died. She was like, "Oh, he can't hurt any more kids. I'm so happy. I danced when he died." Right? Safechuck himself, in his own testimony, claims that he does not, quote unquote, remember being abused until 2013. So how can she have danced when she heard that Michael died in 2009? When he doesn't remember, when he doesn't know anything about this until
yeah, but in some clips I saw in the documentary, she was expressing, I guess, some alarm during the 2003 trial, and not so much with the Jordan Chandler case, but in 2003, I know she was expressing some concern there, and then she was kind of questioning her judgment about letting her son have so much alone time with Michael. That was a part of the movie, and that was prior to 2013.
Sure. Well, I mean, there are many people who Michael opened up his home to, many young people. Many of them were around at the same time as Wade and Jimmy, both of them individually or together. And, there's a big mistruth going on because so many of these people have spoken out, so many of them. We're talking like Macaulay Culkin and Brett Barnes and Kelly Parker and Taloon Zatoun and Nathan Cavallari and like so many people. And they're all saying, so the media is reporting that they're saying, "Oh, this didn't happen to us," and they're saying that's a stupid thing for them to say because it didn't happen to them doesn't mean it doesn't happen to anyone else. But that's a willful manipulation of what they're saying, because it's not just that they're saying nothing happened to them; it's they're saying that we were around at these same times and we know that they're lying. Right?
Well, that's true, but they're also saying, I mean, you could also say that a serial pedophile knows who to target certain emotionally receptive children. And perhaps, and parents, and could possibly coach parents.
Sure, you could say that, but Wade and Jimmy had clinical psychologists at the trial, people who specialize in this stuff. Child Protective Services investigated Michael with the FBI for over a decade, and they found no evidence of anything like that.
But do you think it's odd behavior for a 36-year-old man to have a stranger's child sleep in bed with them alone?
Well, this is the thing. So Michael was not a normal person. He didn't lead a normal person's life. And so when this question comes up and we say, well, do you think that a man of this age? Well, we're not talking about, Bob, who lives down the street. We're talking about Michael Jackson, the most famous person on the planet. And the thing that people misunderstand here is that Michael's bedroom was a 2-story gigantic duplex that's bigger than most people's apartments. Right. This is not like some little box room with some guy who lives down the street and is 20 years old. No, it was like cinema rooms, and they'd have parties in there, and there'd be lots of people there. The parents would sleep in those rooms at the same time as well. Other kids would be there. This is not like what they're saying that he would get them alone. It's completely debunked by other people that were there.
Well, you had what was it? His sister was claiming that she and him slept alone in the bed with Michael. And then there are other stories, like Jordan Chandler said that he had been alone with Michael many times. So you don't think any of that's true, that Michael Jackson never spent the night alone in bed with any of these kids?
It's debunked by the people that were there and the staff and the security. So...
But I think there's some staff have also, a couple maids said she had seen a couple of the kids showering with them.
Yeah, that turned out to just be completely made up, and she admitted later on that it was made up. In fact, Wade, that story was about Wade, and Wade, even after the woman had admitted that she actually never saw anything, Wade emailed the article to his own mother, Joy, who replied, "Wow, none of that is true." And then despite that already being debunked, he includes it in his case anyway, which is just like utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to lend much credence to it. The one thing I think that movie definitely portrayed the parents as having a poor lack of judgment. I mean, I was surprised like when Robson's parents were there, Robson's mother, they apparently just met Michael Jackson once in Australia. Then they come to the States, and then they go spend a weekend in Neverland, and then she leaves her kid there with him for 5 days alone. What parent would do that? Even though Michael Jackson is a mega superstar, I still would never leave my child, if I had kids, alone with this stranger for 5 days.
Well, the narrative that keeps coming up about Wade's mother is that she was the epitome of your sort of, Jenner type momager who's desperate for their kids to be famous at any cost.
A stage mom.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the most hardcore stage mom. She and now in this movie they're claiming that Michael, he liked the family so much and he got them to come over and blah 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 blah. No, what actually happened was Joy Robson, Wade's mother, continued to badger and pester MJJ Productions month after month after month after month after this dance contest where that Wade had won, where he'd met Michael for the first time. She wouldn't let it go. She was like a dog with a bone. And she was ignored for months and months and months and months. And eventually, she obsessed over it to the point where she moved them all over with no money to try and she was like, this is our one shot of stardom, and we're going to do everything it takes to make it happen, leaving her own husband and her other son. Kids. Yeah, exactly. Leaving him behind to try and make this happen. So this is
pathological.
What we see.
It is weird.
Yeah, and even Michael spoke out against it, and this is all on record as well from people that were, people that were around. And Wade was signed to Michael's label MJJ Music, and I know the people that ran MJJ Music, and they say she was hardcore, and Michael would say, you need to let him have a life, and because what you're doing to him is what my parents did to me.
Casey, let me move on. We're kind of running out of time here, but I have a couple questions about. So conspiracy theories abound about Michael Jackson, much like Elvis and other famous celebrities. But tell me if there's any truth to these claims. It's a little conspiracy theory roundup here. Was Michael Jackson chemically castrated by his father?
Absolutely not. Absolutely,
that did not happen.
No. I mean that it's bizarre. It's truly bizarre, and that's up there with me for. I mean, I give that as much credibility as people who say he and LaToya are the same person, he and Janet are the same person, right? It's provably false. That one too. There's an autopsy. Look at the autopsy results, and the thing that frustrates me about the autopsy results is that despite these being out there for 10 years, you still get people saying that. Oh, he didn't, he wanted to be white or things like that. No, he had vitiligo. It's skin disease. It's in the autopsy. Right? And you still get people not believing that as well. And that's just so sad to me, right? Imagine having a debilitating sickness and people not believing you just because you're famous.
Conrad Murray, his doctor, he claimed his father had subjected his son to a course of anti-male hormones to stop the production of testosterone, and which can bring him but to treat acne. Like it was supposed to treat acne?
There's really no evidence
for that
to corroborate that. Yeah, and it goes against anything you'll find in the autopsy report as well. There's no evidence of if you're talking about like hormones and testosterone, the autopsy report says fully functioning adult male genitals, right? No damage, nothing like that. So
yeah. What about his death as a hoax and he's still alive and that he faked his death to escape these accusations of child molestation and because of his financial problems?
Yeah, I mean, that's that's just what we see with any famous person who's dead, right? Whether it be Elvis or Tupac. I remember being in high school and people, absolutely convinced that Tupac was hiding in Cuba. Yeah. Things like that. And even with Prince, I was at Paisley Park last year, and a woman came up to me and my partner Kim. We run a YouTube channel and we do a lot of stuff about Prince. And she came up to us outside Paisley Park, and there's this building at Paisley Park that's called the Egg. It's kind of like this egg-shaped building that's it's not the main building. And I don't know if you know this, but up until very recently, Prince's ashes were displayed prominently in Paisley Park in the atrium.
I have actually heard that. I kind of wanted to go out there and see it, but I've heard they've stopped that now.
They have moved the ashes, but I would still recommend going to Paisley. But what the point that I wanted to make is that literally outside Paisley Park last year, we had a woman come up to us and in 100% belief in what she was saying, 100% confidence in what she was saying that Prince was still alive, and the ashes were actually a camera that was connected to the egg, and he was watching everything that was happening from that building, right? And can you imagine, like, this woman, 100% she believed this, right? It wasn't like, what a wacky, no, this is what she believed, and she was absolutely convinced that these were facts. And so it's the same with Michael. You hear every variation of any death hoax rumor, whether it's Elvis or Tupac or anybody else, or even people that are still alive, like Paul McCartney. There's even that whole Paul is dead thing that went on for years and years. Every variation of everything that you've heard in any of these stories, there'll be a Michael Jackson version from these people.
Well, I read that there's a theory that he cloned himself, and so who died was actually a clone, a genetically accurate clone.
Wow.
And so he's living his life somewhere else. I'm assuming that one's not true. Well, what about
that would be some next level government conspiracy if you could fully clone people and we hadn't heard about
carbon type shit going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Casey, thanks for being on the show. And thanks for providing the counterpoint to this documentary, because I think the counterpoint's really not being not much attention is being put on that. People, you can check out Casey's blog. It's thevioletreality.com?
Thevioletreality.com is our blog. YouTube.com/thevioletreality is our YouTube channel.
And you can follow you on Twitter at twitter.com/Casey Rain.
That's me. Yeah.
All right, Casey. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Looking forward to hearing it back.
I'll send you a link.
Cool. Right. Great. Thank you so much.